Thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm Ying. I'm from University of California. Today I'm happy to share a project on using conversational agents to support learning in early childhood. So before we get into the conversational agent piece, I would like to first talk a little bit about how reading ability is developed in early childhood. Children do not learn how to read on their own. You can't just hand them a book and then expect that they would understand the text on the book someday. So the best way to teach children reading is to read with them and also to engage conversations around the reading with them. So this is usually called dialogic reading. However, this is not very common for parents to adopt this reading style. So they either don't have time or don't have the language skills or just simply are not aware of this reading strategy. So this motivates us to think about whether we could use conversational agents to simulate a child's reading partner, and with the goal to supplement parents' current practices and also model a more beneficial way of reading to our children. So for conversational agents, with the development of natural language processing technology, conversational agents can now understand pretty complex speech input. And also, many young children already interact with and also embrace conversational technologies available in their homes, but mostly for entertainment purposes. But this all points to the possibility of integrating conversational agents in children's learning experiences. So this is our project, a storytelling conversational agent for engaging young readers. So basically, we developed an agent that can tell a story and also include questioning to engage children, to encourage children's verbal engagement. So this is how the agent works. So the agent narrates a storybook while children look at a hard copy of the book. And then it pauses after critical story plots, usually at the end of a page, and asks children a question related to what has happened in the story. Children then give verbal response, and the agent will evaluate the response. If the agent can understand children's response, it's going to give specific feedback whether the response is correct or not, and also give an explanation. But if the agent cannot understand children's response, the agent is going to rephrase the question into a more accessible format, just to scaffolding children's answer, and then give them a second chance to answer that question. So after the questioning, the agent will continue to narrate the story until the next question. Okay, so this is an example question. So this page is about three bear siblings try to reach the honey, but they accidentally broke their mother's favorite seashell, and they were discussing how to get themselves out of trouble. So after narrating this page, the agent asked this question.
Okay, friend, question. Let's think about what you have just heard. The bears were afraid of their mama because they broke something. What did they break?
And if a child gives an answer that the agent cannot understand, the agent will ask a follow-up multiple-choice question. Just simply rephrase this open-ended question to a multiple-choice format.
Let's try again. The bears were afraid of their mama because they broke something. Did the bears break their mama's beautiful blue seashell? Or did they break a honey jar?
And if the agent can understand children's response, it will give responsive feedback. So the feedback first tells children whether the answer is correct or not, and then explain why it is correct or why it is wrong. So this is an example of correct feedback for correct answers.
Yes, you are right. The bears broke their mama's beautiful blue seashell. Look at the picture. A seashell lays scattered in pieces across the floor. Let's turn to the next page and find out what the bears will do to keep themselves out of trouble.
We also build in a fallback feedback. It will be triggered if the agent cannot understand children's response twice in a row. So this is more like a neutral response. It did not address directly to children's response. So the purpose of building this fallback feedback is just to prevent communication breakdown.
Okay, friend. Question. Yes, you are right. Let's think about what the bears broke their mama's beautiful. The bears were afraid of their.
Okay. So now I'm going to show you a video of several children using this conversational agent, just to give you a sense of how it works.
What did the bears break?
The mommy's beautiful blue seashell from the sea.
That is correct.
Okay, question. Why do you think the bears stopped at this island?
To look for the blue shell.
Good job.
Yes, you're right. Okay, question. What places did the bears search on?
On the tree and on the grass and on the cave.
You're right. The bears searched on the water, in the trees, on the mountain, and in a cave on the island.
Do you think that the bears will have smooth sailing on their boat ride back?
No.
That is a great guess.
Yeah, so those are just some examples of how children engage with the conversational agent.
What did the bears break?
And we conducted a small-scale pilot study to understand the usability of this conversational agent. So we have two questions in mind. So the first one is how children interact with this conversational agent. And the second one is how children perceive their experiences reading with the conversational agent. So we recruited 5 children from a suburban neighborhood in Southern California through convenient sampling. So they're all aged 3 to 6, all in preschool or kindergarten. So 3 are native English speakers, and only 1 had experience in interacting with conversational agents before. So during the pilot study, children used the conversational agent independently. But there is an adult sitting right next to the child, but the adults were not supposed to initiate any conversation, but only assisted when the child had trouble navigating the conversational agent or the child is completely off task. And the reading sessions were videotaped, and after the reading, we asked children some perception questions about how they perceive this process. So here are what we found. So first, our first finding is children actually actively responded to the conversational prompts. I think this is encouraging. So for most of the time, children either directly answer the prompts, or when they did not know the answer, they explicitly told the conversational agents that I don't know the answer or I didn't hear the question. But we also noticed there is a possible age differences. So younger children are more likely not to give verbal response, especially when they don't know the answer. So they will sometimes just shrug or look at the adult next to them. So we speculate that it's probably because younger children are more likely to act intuitively as they would in face-to-face communication, but did not consider that the CA actually cannot see them. And the second pattern we noticed is that children responded to the feedback with great affect. So they feel excited when they got a positive feedback, and look a little bit upset when they hear the negative feedback, which is a falling sound effect. And also, they seem to be more tentative to the explanation after the feedback when they got the question wrong. So they have more visual attention to the book or more visual attention to the conversational agent. So the third pattern is related to the scaffolding features, which is the back and forth questions we included. So there are three kinds of potential conversational breakdown moments happened in the pilot study. So the first is children had kind of the fuzzy pronunciation. So the CA did not recognize what the child said, even though they did give a legit answer. Or children did not provide an answer that we had anticipated. Although we did program a wide range of possible answers, but children are very creative and kind of unpredictable. So there are some answers that we did not capture. And the third kind of possible breakdown moment is when children did not give any verbal response. However, when the conversation was followed up with multiple choice questions, almost all children can produce an answer that can be understood by the conversational agent the second time. So it seems that the scaffolding feature worked pretty well to prevent communication breakdown. So here's another example of how the scaffolding feature works.
Okay, question. What is the first thing the bears say to their mama when they see her?
You're welcome.
Let's try again. What is the first thing the bears say to their mama when they see her? Do the bears say sorry? Or do they talk about the boat ride?
Say sorry.
Yes, you're right. The bears were afraid of their mama because they broke something. What did they break? Let's try again. The bears were afraid of their mama because they broke something. Did the bears break their mama's beautiful blue seashell? Or did they break the honey jar?
I think so.
Yes, you are right. Okay.
And we also found that children are learning how to converse with a conversational agent. When you talk to a CA, there is pretty strict turn-taking restriction. You can only talk when the CA is listening. However, children may have different expectations of that because we observed that some children attempted to talk to the CA while it was narrating. Then, of course, their comments would be ignored by the CA. And also when Google Home, so we used Google Home device, when Google Home's microphone is ready to listen to children's response, the 4 lights will light up. So this is the default setting. So most children did not notice this. So they responded immediately after the conversational agent finished the question. So this created an issue because the device may have missed some part of the children's speech. So we then modified the setting and then added a sound effect. And this combined signal seemed to reduce the instances of rushed response. And next, usually in human-to-human communication, the conversation turns switch really fast. However, because the conversational agent needs time to process children's speech data, so there is usually a short delay before the children can get feedback from the conversational agent. So we observe that some children constantly repeat themselves until they get the response. So this uncertainty may be because children can rely on other social cues to make sure that they are heard by the conversational agent. So in terms of behavior interactions like touching, patting, so it's rarely observed, probably because the conversational agent, the device, is not anthropomorphized, so it kind of discourages children to show this kind of pro-social behaviors. Lastly, about children's perception, All children indicated that they liked reading with the conversational agent. When they were asked why, some mentioned that the cognitive and affective attributes of the CA. And also, when we also asked children whether they have any suggestions that we could make the conversational agent better, and some mentioned that the CA cannot understand them very well, and some brought up the possibility that whether they can ask a CA question instead. Just summarize, so we found that a lot of children show similar patterns as to face-to-face communication. So this is encouraging because it suggests that CA elicits natural interaction. However, sometimes children use strategies that are not typical in face-to-face communication. So this suggests that children may be developing their mental models to interact with intelligent interfaces, because some human-to-human interaction schema may not be suitable in the context of human-to-CA conversation. So lastly, just some design implications. So it seems that specific responsive feedback that shows the agent can correctly understand children's speech help engage them. And also scaffolding features help to prevent communication breakdown, and developers may want to consider to relax the turn-taking restriction to allow slight overlap between children's and the agent's speech. Lastly, we may be able to train the agent to understand the content of the story so that the children can ask questions. And we're currently working on a larger scale study to evaluate the effect of this conversational agent. So we wanted to see whether this kind of CA-initiated dialogue can help children learn and engage, and also to what extent this kind of CA-initiated dialogue can simulate the dialogic experiences with a real human reading partner. So this is my presentation. I would like to thank the child participants and the families, and also my advisor, Mark Warschauer, for supporting this study. Now I'm happy to take questions.
So I have a question. Sorry. It really seems like you thought about everything, and I think it's an amazing work. I'd like my nieces and nephews to use
Thank
this.
you.
I wanted to know if in certain times where the CA didn't understand children again and again, even after the scaffolding, you saw maybe like a lack of confidence suddenly in children. Maybe they were answering in a less confident manner because they understood. Because I know that that's like it for us, you know, like when Google Home we take it upon ourselves. We're saying he doesn't understand me, and we don't put it on technology. Like maybe technology isn't good enough. So I was wondering, like, who did they attribute the fail to?
That's a great question. So actually, we tried the different number of times when we allowed the children try before the conversational agent respond. So we tried 3 times, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and 5 times before the conversational agent give fallback response. So we found that actually, you're right, the more the children tried, the more, if they get more failure, so they are less confident in responding the following questions. So we ended up doing just twice. So if the conversational agent cannot understand children's response twice for one question, we would just give a default fallback response. And with just the 2 attempts, most of children did not realize that the agent actually did not understand their response.
So I have another question. You said that children didn't treat it as something social, but then their reactions are very social, like them saying, he likes me,
Yeah, so I think it's just for the behavioral interaction, because the just external feature of the conversational agent does not seem to trigger a lot of pro-social behavior. But actually, the children did realize that the agent has some sort of intelligence that they think is more human-like. So I think from the verbal interaction, they did show a lot of pro-social behaviors.
So I really like this. I really liked how it is encouraging kids to be more active in their reading rather than just passively reading. But one question I do have is, did the kids ever find the questions to be taxing at some point, or to be more of a burden that they just wanted to read rather than have to engage with the chatbot?
That's a great point too. Yeah, so this is the first iteration of our conversational agent. So most of the questions are kind of the formative assessment question. But in the next iteration, we did include a lot of chit chat that would encourage children to bring about their personal experiences related to the story. So we hope that this would be less assessment-like and more engaging.
Let's thank our